From the Pep Radio Newsroom, these are the stories we are covering for your Labor Day. Some 10,000 hotel workers, represented by the Unite Here union, walked off the job Sunday at 24 hotels in 8 cities, including Honolulu, Boston, San Francisco, San Jose, San Diego, and Seattle. Hotel workers in other cities could strike in the coming days as contract talks stall over demands for higher wages and a reversal of service and staffing cuts. A total of 15,000 workers have voted to authorize strikes. Unionized housekeepers have been waging a fierce fight to restore automatic daily room cleaning at major hotel chains, saying they've been saddled with unmanageable workloads or, in many cases, fewer hours and a decline in income. In a statement before the strikes began, Hilton said it was committed to negotiating in good faith to reach fair and reasonable agreements. Marriott and Omni did not return requests for comments to the Associated Press. The labor unrest serves as a reminder of the pandemic's lingering toll on low-wage women, especially Black and Hispanic women who are overrepresented in front-facing service jobs. Women have largely returned to the workforce since bearing the brunt of pandemic-era furloughs. Those women who haven't gone back to work have dropped out to take on caregiving responsibilities. That recovery has masked a gap in employment between women with college degrees and those without. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, compared to February 2019, the U.S. hotel industry employs about 1.9 million people, which is a loss of nearly 196,000 workers. And nearly 90% of building housekeepers are women. And now this news about legislation passed by lawmakers in Massachusetts. The Massachusetts Oversight Committee of Nursing Homes would be strengthened. LGBTQ plus nursing home residents would be protected against discrimination, and better controls would be in place to protect against the spread of infectious disease outbreaks. Approved on Thursday, the bill would require long-term care facilities to provide staff training on the rights of LGBTQ plus older adults and those living with HIV, and bar staff from discriminating against people based on their sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, intersex status, or HIV status. The proposal also would streamline the licensing process for small house nursing homes, alternative care centers that focus on smaller groups of residents, and use familiar domestic routines. Long-term care facilities would also be required to develop outbreak response plans to help contain the spread of disease and ensure communication with state health officials, residents, families, and staff. The legislation would also create a new fund to help recruit a long-term care workforce, including grants to develop new certified nursing assistants and grants for direct care workers to train to become licensed practical nurses. Under the bill, the Department of Public Health would have the authority to revoke a long-term care facility's licensure for failure to provide adequate care or for a lack of financial capacity. The bill also gives health officials the power to appoint a temporary manager. The bill now heads to Governor Maura Healey for her signature. From Kentucky, we are covering this story. In Kentucky, Iowa, Nebraska, Missouri, and other red states, state-funded universities and colleges are very publicly dismantling diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives as state lawmakers threaten the state schools with legislation that hasn't even passed. It doesn't have to. The threats just need to earn administration's attention. In the case of the University of Kentucky at Lexington, the state school disbanded its office promoting DEI efforts in response to lawmakers questioning whether the University of Kentucky's focus on identity has stifled political discussions, its president said on Tuesday. The school has listened to policymakers and heard many of their questions about whether we appear partisan or political on the issues of our day, and as a result, narrowly interpret things solely through the lens of identity, according to UK President Eli Capilouto, who wrote that in a campus-wide email. In so doing, the concern is that we either intentionally or unintentionally limit discourse. I hear many of those concerns reflected in discussions with some of our students, faculty, and staff across our campus. While a bill addressing these concerns failed to make it out of the legislature, Capilouto acted preemptively to shut down the school's Office for Institutional Diversity and divide its responsibilities among other school departments, A new Office for Community Relations will take on some of the shuttered department's responsibilities, Capilouto said, and the restructuring won't result in any job losses. Before we close out today's news, I would like to share my thoughts on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Based on the stories we have covered about major corporations, educational institutions, and governmental entities, it appears that conservatives are waging a massive war against these concepts, and they are winning. Whether schools are banning books from Florida to Pennsylvania and beyond, or corporations and universities are undoing their LGBTQ plus and racial equity centers and employee resource groups, we must realize as a community that in doing so, they are removing safe spaces for the most vulnerable among us. If a student at a college doesn't feel safe because of their sexual orientation or gender identity, that student will likely not return to that campus or institution. If they do, they are taking on challenges with minimal support from administration and faculty members who are restricted about how they can approach problems related to sexual orientation and gender identity. If a student feels vulnerable at school or an employee feels isolated at work, they will be less productive and more likely to simply walk away. When we feel included as part of a group and affirmed in our identity, we are more confident and thus more productive. DEI has even become the new N-word slur used against none other than Kamala Harris in her bid for the White House. The MAGA-led GOP has referred to her on numerous occasions as a, quote, DEI hire. Not only does that insult her intelligence and capability, it demeans her based on her race and ethnic heritage. As a community, we must resist the urge to allow corporate, educational, and governmental forces to continue shutting down DEI initiatives. It is only by sitting in a position of privilege that one can say that these programs are not needed. We all deserve to be treated with dignity and respect in our place of employment, our school, and by our government. That's a look at today's news from PEP Radio, and let's get back to our programming right now.